Welcome to the Speak Pact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the Speak Pact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Speakers need to be on LinkedIn, but not just on LinkedIn. They need to be on LinkedIn correctly, especially if you're in the corporate training space. And there's ways to do it where you get greater exposure and can attract those high value engagements and opportunities. So for that reason, I have brought a premier LinkedIn expert to you today. Mark Williams is known as Mr. LinkedIn, and there's good reason. He is widely regarded as one of the world's top leading LinkedIn experts. His career spans over 20 years in the recruitment industry. He has been in the LinkedIn world since barely anybody knew about it, 2008. And he's trained thousands of LinkedIn users. So welcome, Mark. I am super excited what you're going to bring to the table today.
Thank you very much. It's really good to be here. Nice to speak to you and everybody listening and watching.
Well, tell me, what took you from that corporate space, the recruitment industry, to the world of LinkedIn as your focus? Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so my relationship with LinkedIn started about 2007. No, actually 2005, thinking about it. If you actually look at my LinkedIn account, or I was to look at my LinkedIn account, it will tell you that I started my account in 2007. But actually, the truth is I had created an account about 18 months previous to that, that I then closed down, which is a classic scenario of this new thing came along. I was running a recruitment business at the time, had a number of people working for me. One guy in particular who was a top performer, started to spend a lot of time staring at a computer screen. Now, certainly my background in the days of sales and recruitment was you're not going to make money staring at a computer screen, right? So I felt I needed to have a word with him. And when I did, I had to be careful because he was a top performer. So I didn't want to upset him too much, but I need to make sure that he was on his game. And he said, no. He said, I know you think I'm probably wasting time, but actually I've found this website. It's a bit like Facebook, but for business people. And you can literally map any organization out and find out who all the key people are in that company. And it's just all there. He said, you wouldn't believe it. And I didn't really believe him, but I thought, well, I better just, give him the time of day and look into it. And now this guy was fairly early on in his career. I'd been around for many years at this point. And the context that I put to what I was looking at when I first looked at LinkedIn was, hold on a second, this is amazing. I've spent years trying to build like a black book of contacts, these people that I knew, and then I'll build a relationship with them. And then during that relationship, I might leverage them to perhaps introduce me to other people. And then on you go from there, and that was kind of who you knew and your relationship with those people, the strength of those relationships was everything, that was key. And, and then all of a sudden, this website was just putting it out there. It was like, wow. And I was looking up people. I was like a kid in a candy shop. I was looking up people and going, right, so this person here I've known for all this time. And I'm looking at them and I'm looking at, they're connected to other people that I've known just as long, but I had no idea they knew each other. I was like, that is amazing. And I remember this guy going, well, I just thought it was an interesting way of seeing company structures and stuff like that. And I went, oh no, honestly, there's so much more to this. And that was my first introduction to it, say around 2005. I went a bit crazy, connected with anybody and everybody, went completely bonkers, just sending invites left, right, and center, and really not thinking about what I was doing. And then realized that perhaps I was sending out messages to lots of people and just abusing it really, and not treating it like the valuable network that it was. And just ignorance of understanding the process, really. And so I decided, also a silly idea, but I decided to close my account. I thought, I'm going to start all over again. I've messed this up. Whereas I could have easily just corrected that. But again, we're talking a long time ago, and LinkedIn wasn't quite as sophisticated as it is now. So I decided to stop and start again. So this account that I have now officially started in 2007. I was basically realizing that the people that worked for me would gain real benefit by mastering this tool as I saw it. And they were recruiters, and they were obviously looking to find candidates to fill their jobs. But to me, that was obvious. That was kind of like, well, yes, but that's a double-edged sword, because LinkedIn themselves, if you think about LinkedIn in those early days, they basically, and this is still true to a degree today, it's far more than just this now, but their business model was, right, what we can do is create a network online where business professionals are allowed to come along and join for free. All they need to do in return is just give us their CV, in effect, and put it online, right? Put all their background and then start connecting to people, okay? And we can sell that to recruiters. Right? So what we're going to do, in effect, is set ourselves up as competition to recruitment businesses, because recruitment businesses are charging companies to find candidates for them. We're going to go to those companies and say, we've got this huge deal. All those people, those recruiters will find for you are here, right? And all you need to do is pay us a license fee, and you can access them yourself, right? That was the premise of how LinkedIn started. LinkedIn's unusual as social media sites go in that they had a really clear idea of how they were going to monetize to start with. They weren't, to make comparisons, they weren't set up by a college student with, an idea and then had to sort of think, how can I make money out of this? So advertising. It wasn't like that at all. The likes of Reid Hoffman, who co-founder of LinkedIn, these guys had a business background. They had already run businesses, very successful businesses, and they knew how they were going to monetize from day one. And still today, recruitment is by far the biggest revenue stream for LinkedIn, but by a country mile. So it struck me that, going back to, understanding it to start with, that I was, these guys were saying to me, who were working for me, were saying, we can find candidates. And I was like, well, you can, but in reality, this is your competitor in terms of finding candidates. But you can use it in a more beneficial way in many respects by using it to build relationships and win new clients. So I very much saw it from day one as a business development, win new business type of tool. The first thing I did was think, right, I need to get someone in to train them, because I'm kind of learning as I go along. I don't really know what I'm doing with this thing. So let's find a training company. Okay, where is one? Back in the day, there just weren't any LinkedIn trainers. In fact, your last guest, Mike O'Neill, was just about, talking about LinkedIn, last guest, he was just about the first guy. He was out doing it in those days. Only in the US, but there were a couple of others. I remember reading a book by a guy called Bill Vick, who wrote a book about LinkedIn and recruitment. But other than that, there just wasn't anyone. So I thought, okay, I'll just have to do it myself. So I really need to get my head around it. So I, spent a lot of time and effort. And to give this some context, I was running a business with lots of people working there. I had plenty of other things to do, but I prioritized this because I thought, and it was a gamble thought, this really. It could have been right or wrong, I thought this is the way things are going to go. And if we don't get to grips with this now, it's going to come back and bite us at some stage in the future. So I spent an awful lot of time really getting to grips with it. And I really enjoyed the process of getting to grips with it. And I really enjoyed the process of training my staff how to use it, which then kind of naturally led into thinking, there's going to be lots of other businesses out there run by people like me that are going, this LinkedIn thing's a bit of a worry. What is that all about? Right. And we need to be on top of this. I need to get someone in to help us. And there wasn't anybody apart from me in those early days, in the UK anyway. That's a long answer to a short question.
Fabulous. There's so much brilliance there. And I'm not sure even where to begin, because there's a lot of questions that were popping up as you were going along. So first and foremost, I think I am probably like a lot of other speakers, emerging voices, corporate trainers who just thought, I should probably be on LinkedIn. Right. So we put up a profile and we just kind of sit there. And I did for years. I just sat there because you're a professional. You should have a LinkedIn profile. But I didn't know the power behind it. And I didn't even know how to utilize it. So I love that trainers like you, trainers like Mike O'Neill, there are people out there who have now proven the process. You've paid your cost. You each have different approaches. And your approach might resonate more than somebody else would, right? So I love that those opportunities are out there now. You didn't have that luxury and you figured it out, which makes you an amazing trainer. It wasn't probably until maybe 3 years ago when I'm like, more and more people are talking about LinkedIn. It's probably a really important place for speakers, especially corporate trainers, those who focus, they're corporate centric. I'm gonna dive in a little bit more. And wow, like just in a very short time, it went from, I think I had 200 connections to now thousands of connections. You have tens of thousands of connections, but not just willy-nilly, like really important connections. Fabulous. I've met some of the most fabulous people, and in a professional sense, being able to collaborate and go back and forth. It is very, very powerful. Can you speak to, if you are, let's say, a high-level professional who is now thinking, I think I want to start sharing some of this curated knowledge. I want to start speaking, maybe even start making that part of my revenue model. Is LinkedIn the place to be?
Well, yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, if you think about the basis of how you're going to start off in that scenario, is the first thing is that once you decide that's what you're going to do, you need to get the message out. That's what you're going to do, right? So you need people to know who you are and what you're all about. You can't go out there and start going, I'm a professional speaker, book me to speak, right? Obviously, you got to understand what is it you're going to speak about, who is your audience, both in terms of the client audience and the broader audience, and what are you going to say to those people to be able to reach them, okay, on LinkedIn? You got to understand that your message needs to carry to the right type of audience. And so presenting yourself in a way that has clarity, that people in that core audience will understand them, it will resonate with them. And then you've got the world at your fingertips. You've got over 1 billion people on LinkedIn. Not that massively matters, because you don't want to reach all of those people. Understand that your audience, your niche audience, or niche, sorry, as you would say over there.
I prefer niche.
Are you prefer niche? Oh, okay. I thought it was always niche. So, what are they interested in? What do they want to know about? What are you going to speak about that's really going to trigger them? That's really going to be something that makes them go, we need to get this person in. We need to book this person. This is a really interesting speaker, really interesting subject, and it's important to us. And obviously that's got nothing to do with LinkedIn. But what has got something to do with LinkedIn is the fact that the way you're going to reach people is by speaking about something on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't mean, giving a speaking performance on LinkedIn. I mean, posting on LinkedIn about subjects that are going to really resonate with your audience. Now, in my experience of this, people often don't know the answer to that question, or they think they do. But if you were to fast forward a couple of years, they possibly might change that view, because with experience, we learn more about what our subject should be. Now, I know speakers who have started off with this subject because they're passionate about it, but it's never really taken off, right? It's never really got that many bookings on the back of that. But through trial and error, and by speaking to people and getting feedback, they've realized that actually I'm going to pivot a little bit here and end up with this topic. And this is what I'm going to become known for. And now their speaking business really takes off, right? And you might get lucky and just hit right first time, but in the real world, most people, that's not really going to happen. Okay. Now, in the days before LinkedIn, what would happen, of course, is that you would learn that out on the circuit. You would actually go out there and speak to people. You maybe start doing some free speaking gigs at local networking events and things like that, gradually learning your art and your trade, but also learning about the audience and what they want to hear and what's important to them. But you can now do that on LinkedIn. You can test what the audience really want to hear about by trying different topics, by trying different things. So that's what you do. You get out there and you start posting content and engaging with people. And I'll come on to the difference between the two of those things in a bit if you wish. But getting out there and trying things. Do they want to know about this? Does this resonate with people? And you can clearly see how certain topics will resonate with an audience and others won't. And from that, you then start to build your speaking business, building your craft, understanding your audience. The first rule about content on LinkedIn, and it's a really obvious one, but I would say the majority of people on LinkedIn get it wrong, is you post for your audience. And I would say speaking is exactly the same. You speak to and for your audience. They've got to sit there and go, this really hits the mark. This really resonates with me. This is important to me. This is something that I need to learn about. This is something I need to improve at. Whatever that might be, that's what you should be doing on LinkedIn. It's not about you. It's not about what interests you, although you would hope that it would also interest you. It's very much about, I need to speak to something on LinkedIn and on stage that actually really resonates with my audience. Things that worry them, things that excite them, things that stir some level of emotion that is significant enough to make them get excited, positively or negatively excited, but excited. Yeah. And you will see that on LinkedIn because they will comment. And if you can post something that makes people comment, you'll know that you're getting close to a subject that resonates with your audience.
Fabulous. You mean you don't just say what you want to say, you say what they need to hear, or at least what they feel they need to hear?
Yeah. Or even sometimes they're not even able to, if you to ask people, what do you want to hear? They're not always able to tell you that because you don't always know until you hear it, right? Yeah. But by trying something and them going, oh, right, okay, yeah, that means something to me. And they start coming up with their views and ideas and questions, and it's very easy to spot subjects that really resonate with an audience, but sometimes they don't know. Asking them isn't always the answer. It's more about putting it in front of them and seeing how they react.
Yeah. And that goes back to really understanding your audience and what their needs are, whether they know what their needs are or not, right? We don't know what we don't know. And when you bring some of those solutions, and it puts off fireworks and excites somebody because they're like, yes, that might be the missing link for me. They're obviously you've struck a chord. You can't rise to the level of connections that you have, quality connections that you have, unless you are creating a space that people find valuable. Yeah. Right. So let's talk. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that knowing the topics is half the trick, but that has to come first. Right. So you got to get that right. Then the second part of that is the personal, what I would call the personal branding side. And I don't mean personal branding in the purest sense of personal branding. What I mean by that is your style, your personality, your character brought to that subject. So you could have 10 people on LinkedIn who all talk about the same subject. And they all may do it very well, but they'll never do it the same as you because they're not the same person as you. But what people tend to do is, especially when they start out, they try and appeal to everyone. So it's like they end up being quite vanilla in the way that they deliver. So I think get a sense of who you are. Now, I made this mistake, both as a speaker, but also the way I learned this was through podcasting, actually. So I've got a podcast called The Inform Podcast. And, we've been going for many years now. And early days, I would be, I think, quite vanilla. I would be presenting topics around LinkedIn, giving advice. But it was just a voice giving advice. It could have been anyone. And then over time, what I learned was that I remember the first time it happened was there was something, I can't remember, it's a long time ago, but something that happened on LinkedIn that annoyed me, right? Something that LinkedIn had done, which, by the way, is a regular occurrence for me. So they changed something, and it really annoyed me. And I thought, they're just not thinking of their users. And I started talking about it. And by this time, I was relaxed enough in front of the microphone to feel comfortable to do this. And I just started having a rant. And this rant went on for about 10 minutes. And I remember at the end of it, I do very little editing on my podcast. So I thought at the end of it, was that a bit... maybe that was a bit raw, but I'm just going to leave it in anyway. And honestly, the feedback was fantastic. People loved it. And they were going, I either totally agree with you or I absolutely don't agree with you. But do you know what? I really respect the fact that you were prepared to say that's where you stand on that subject. And then I realized, that is what personal branding is all about. That is, so you can take a topic and then you got to bring your flavor to it and really start to develop that personal brand. I'm known for, I will be quite frank in my views. That's my style and that's who I am, right? So people get used to that and people love it. Some people absolutely hate it. That's okay. That's fine. No problem with that at all. Get comfortable with that because there'll be enough raving fans out there that really love it. And that's how you get speaking gigs. The bottom line is people will go, you got to get this Mark Williams guy in. He really, honestly, he did this and he did that. I love him. He's great. That's what you want people to be saying. And you'll have others going, not my cup of tea at all. Fine. No problem.
Mark, you are singing my song and you tied that in towards the end anyway, which is fabulous. We're definitely in harmony, right? There are so many speakers, and this probably even happens on LinkedIn, who are afraid to share their curated knowledge. They're afraid to share their intellectual property, their IP, because they're afraid that it's going to get stolen. Somebody could take all of your slides. They could take every single word you say, and they are not going to resonate with their audience the way that you do. And actually, the more you give, the more you get. There's just no outgiving, right? I've spoken about this on this podcast time and again, but I love that you're correlating that also with LinkedIn, because it's so important that you present not just information, but your POV, your point of view, your approach to that solution and that information for who your listeners to be. So fabulous. I
have personal experience of that as well, to be honest. What you just discussed there, not giving stuff away. I used to, I was guilty of that. I definitely made that mistake again many years ago, but I would do a lot of training sessions with paying customers, and they would get the gold, right? The silver and the bronze was for LinkedIn and, podcasting and all the rest of it, right? But the gold would be for the customers that are paying. So they would get the very best tips, And I don't know how I realized that was wrong, but I just did at some point. It kind of just dawned on me that actually I should just be giving it all out, And the more gold you give, the more business you get, right? It seems counterintuitive, but it's far better to just let it all out, right?
The more you invest, the more you get back. Like if you don't invest it, there's no chance of you making a dividend on that investment, right? And every investment's a risk. Maybe somebody will steal your IP, but they're never going to. There's enough. There's enough for everybody, right? They're never going to be Mike Williams. Mark, sorry, you mentioned Mike and that got in my head, but they're never going to be Mark Williams. And your people are just going to be drawn to you.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I could name LinkedIn trainers out there that I remember them first starting out, and I would see some of their content and think, you listened to the podcast last week, didn't you? And you've basically just used that, and you're building an audience by using stuff you've heard from me. And it's only human to feel a little bit cheated by that and think, well, but then after a while you go, well, who am I? Why should I? It's just good information. Maybe I thought of it, or maybe I got it from someone else, or maybe I got a bit of it from one person and a bit of it from someone else and put the two things together. Who cares? Bottom line is, I'm going to keep giving it out. And if people still want to steal it, if that's the perception of it, great. Good to them. Good for them. I don't mind. If they grow a great business on the back of it, great. Yeah.
If it was that good, that's if you look at it as a compliment, your content was so valuable that some other leader in the field thought that they were going to utilize it, then that tells you you're hitting on something. And anybody interested in that subject matter, they're going to figure it out. They're going to, that sounds a lot like Mark Williams, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually building your platform.
But even if that doesn't happen, right, and they do well on the back of, in inverted commas, stealing your content, even if that does happen, yes, I might argue that, that's not very good of them. I would never do that, blah, blah, blah. They should at least give credit to me, but, wasted energy, frankly. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. And as long as you keep doing what you keep doing, then you'll keep being successful. It's up to them if they want to give credit or not. And that's their morals. And they'll be judged by that, right? If I get information from other people, I'll always give credit to it, but to them. But, you live by your own rules, and if they want to do their own thing in their own way, then that's them, isn't it? They can build their own brand that way. It might work for them, it might not. Not really my concern, to be honest. So
I love that you brought this element into the conversation, Mark, because that's so true. Where we focus, we become, right? If we focus on loss and people stealing and, that kind of thing, it's going to affect our profession. It's going to affect us personally. If we focus on, there's so much out there, right? There's so much to give. And if somebody else gets a piece of my strategy, and it helps their business, even if it didn't come from my own mouth, I know it was mine to begin with. I know what the source came from, and it's all good, right? It just means more people are going to do better. So I really believe in the power of where you put your energy and the direction that takes you. So I'm really glad that you touched on that.
There's also a sort of mindset here, isn't there? Which is sort of what you're just talking about, I suppose. But I used to come across this mindset challenge early days of training LinkedIn, because you've got to remember, back when I first started, LinkedIn was really all about recruitment. Most people were just thinking of it as recruitment. Obviously, LinkedIn themselves were very much thinking of it as recruitment. And the vast majority of people that were active on LinkedIn back in the day were recruiters, right? You didn't really see anybody else being particularly active, with other people were on it. And so and the vast majority of my training clients were companies and their recruitment teams, right? And so I would be going into these organizations or talking to them about LinkedIn training. They'd be saying, we don't want to encourage people to use LinkedIn, because what's going to happen if they do use LinkedIn is that then our competitors are going to come along, find them on LinkedIn and want to headhunt them, right? And so by using LinkedIn and by encouraging our staff to use LinkedIn, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're going to lose all our staff. And my reaction to that was, well, I'll tell you what, here's a good solution to that. Because generally speaking, people recruit good people that can do a really good job. So the easiest way to get over that problem is just recruit people that aren't very good, right? Nobody will headhunt them. So you'll have no problems at all. But if you try and put a fence around your staff, if you try and prevent people from finding out how good your people really are, especially in sales, when part of their job is to be known for being very good, part of their quality of being very good is that they're known for it, then, you're fighting a losing battle, but also your attitude, that kind of culture of trying to protect something, is just not productive at all. And it goes the same for IP. As soon as you start thinking in a protective way, let's put a fence around, I don't want everyone to know this, know that, then that's when you start to come unstuck. I think it's as much about your attitude and how that affects you going forward as anything else. We are in a different world, of course, from pre-LinkedIn days, when the days before LinkedIn, I guess, as I said, you had a black book, and always amuses me, sometimes I do, in fact, quite often do sessions with law firms, and law firms traditionally have always worked off a black book, certainly in the UK anyway. It's very much a thing, this partner's got his black book, he's got his contacts and I remember having a conversation with these guys and saying, that's a bit sort of hidden and protected, you're proud of your little black book that nobody knows about, and you've got these contacts and that's how you succeed. But guess what? All those people that are hidden in your black book, they're all on LinkedIn.com. They're all there. So anyone can come along and find them. So you better find a different way of differentiating yourself now, because that isn't going to work anymore. And that, again, is just another example of that kind of fencing in protective attitude that's not progressive and doesn't succeed. And something like LinkedIn has made it's so much easier for people to access anybody than this kind of trying to keep hold of something just doesn't work. So it works right through, whether it be protecting your staff from getting recruited, protecting your IP, or protecting your clients, or your contacts. None of that really counts. It's just about you and getting out there and doing the best possible job that you can, and building that, as I say, personal brand, so that the percentage of people out there that love you, and there's always going to be people that really love what you do and how you do it, are the ones that you're going to do business with. That's your slice of the pie. Your job is to present yourself in such a way and become visible in such a way that your slice of the pie are attracted towards you. That's what it's about.
So good. And I love that you brought up that kind of fenced in mentality versus a progressive mentality. I have co-founded and co-run Booking Agents Connect. And it's obviously all of us competitors literally come together and collaborate. And it has been the most fabulous, valuable experience for all of us, right? But so many times when we send out an invitation to an agent or a bureau, we'll get flat, no, not interested. All of a sudden they'll stop the connection, all the things. Fine, that's fine. And also every now and then I'll get a little note from an agent or a bureau. I'm non-exclusive, right? And many are out there, and they will see that I have been having a conversation with one of their speakers on something totally different, maybe interviewing them on SpeakPact, whatever it might be. Please do not talk to my person as if they own the person. And it's like, wow, you are somebody I really don't want to know. Like that mentality is just kind of foreign to me. And it's good when it comes out, you can see it. But you are bringing up so much valuable concepts when it comes not just to LinkedIn, but just how you present yourself in a professional manner.
I mean,
go ahead.
Taking your particular scenario, you would probably benefit from using something that I call an associate's strategy towards LinkedIn. But an associate strategy doesn't have to be associating with competitors, although it can be, and in your case sounds like it might be. So let me explain this, because it's actually a real kind of specific LinkedIn strategy, this.
Ooh, good.
So what we do is we go, let's define, I call them associates, right? Call them what you like, but that's just how I've labeled it. So define an associate.
Way better than competitors. I always stumble over the word competitor. Associate is fabulous.
It's got sort of negative connotations to it, isn't it?
Yes.
Right, you're trying to beat them. It sounds very liberal to say it, but the reality is in business we can all win, right?
Yes.
That's the truth. I mean, that's the reality. That kind of mindset of, there's only ever going to be one winner, just isn't true, is it? I mean, that doesn't work. This is not the Olympics, But anyway, going back to associate. So define an associate as somebody that is focused on building relationships and doing business with the same people as you. Now, obviously competitors are that, but there's plenty of other people that are as well, right? So if you're saying, I don't know, as a speaker, I'm targeting, I don't know, let's say marketing managers or CMOs in organizations. Well, let me tell you, there are lots of people that are targeting them on LinkedIn, right? They want to find them, they want to do business with them, they want to build relationships with them, and they're really motivated to do so. And they are on LinkedIn and they're working hard to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. In any given market, I don't know, let's use simple numbers, right? So let's imagine that there are 10 people on LinkedIn that fit the category of an associate, okay? i.e. they're motivated to hit the same people as you or want to reach the same people that you do. But let's imagine that actually in the real world, 5 of those are, yes, they're on LinkedIn, but they never really use it, right? They're just not utilizing the facility that's sat there in front of them. Cost them nothing, but they're just not using it, right? So we can scrub those out of it. And then out of the other 5, 3 of them are not especially active. So 5 are not using it at all. 3 of them only occasionally. So you just see them liking stuff, but they're not highly active. They're not commenting a lot. They're not really using it. They're never posting. Okay, so that leaves us with 2. But these 2, all right, I'll say they could be competitors, but they don't have to be at all. Just targeting the same people as you. are active, they're on LinkedIn, they're posting, they're commenting on people's stuff. They are trying to do what you're trying to do, all right, in the same way. So what you do is you say, right, my aim here is I'm going to build relationships with those two people. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to engage with their content. I'm going to support their content as much as I can. And I'm also going to connect with them. Not necessarily initially, because you've got to, you don't want to be a random person just coming out of the blue. You want to kind of build something first, then send them an invitation to connect, and then keep building that relationship. And then maybe suggest jumping on a Zoom call or whatever it might be. And in that call, you would say to them, look, it just struck me that, we must have a lot of people that we're both trying to reach. And it strikes me that we could help each other because I don't know, I might have a pitch with a client, or you might have a pitch next week, and you might contact me and say, look, I've got a pitch with this company next week. And I might say to you, I pitched to them 2 years ago. All right. What did you learn from that? How did it go? What were I could really help that person. We could really help each other. We could help just with names, or we could go further than that and help with real hard information. But there's a lot we could do to make life much easier for each other, right? That's the non-LinkedIn side of it, if you like, although the initial contact's made through LinkedIn. But also, the way the algorithm will work on LinkedIn is that you can be really beneficial to each other on the platform itself. Now, the way that works is this. So let's imagine that I've identified you as an associate, and you're there active on LinkedIn, and you're commenting on the people's stuff, and you're posting your own stuff, and so am I, okay? Now, we're both posting content that we believe will be of interest to our target audience, all right? So our content will be fairly similar, right? Or similar subjects anyway. And then what I'm going to do is when I comment on your content, okay, what happens is that by that process means that I'm likely to see it first. Because if I keep commenting on your content, the algorithm will start going, right, next time you post, we're going to put this on Mark's feed. Okay, because he seems to really like it. I mean, the algorithm's job is pretty simple, really. It's to keep us on the page. There's no more complicated than that. So it just learns from the behavior that we show it. So, if I keep commenting on your stuff, it's going to keep giving it to me, right? But the thing is, when I do comment on it, what happens is it then passes down the line to some of those people that are following me and connected to me, okay, of which will include many of the people that you want to reach, all right? So the likelihood is that by me commenting, I'm actually putting it onto the homepage feed of the people that you want to see it. Now, you might argue, yeah, but hold on a second, Mark. I'm already connected to those people. So when I post, they're going to see it anyway. Not actually true, all right? Because of what I call double impact. Again, just a term that I've made up. It's not official terminology. I'm sure LinkedIn have something that they call this, but goodness knows what it is. But what double impact means is this. And you look at your feed and you will often see examples of this. But until someone points it out to you, you don't always notice it. So a post appears on your feed, and it might be from a first tier connection, but above it, it says first tier connection, a different person commented on it. So the reason it's there is not that it's just from a first tier in isolation. It's because another first tier has commented on it. That gives two reasons to the algorithm to show it on that feed. So how does this work with associates? Well, of course, we're both connected to the target audience, and we're both commenting on each other's content, therefore doubling the chance of it appearing on the homepage feed of those people, right? So we both become more visible to the right people. And this is by you understanding the algorithm and using it to our benefit in the way that it's designed to work. And we're trying to cheat the system at all here. We are using it in the way that it is designed to work. This is what LinkedIn wants to happen. So we're not pushing water uphill here. We're making life easier for each other. And if you imagine a scenario where you've got all of these associates, and I've used the example of 2 out of 10 there, but that could be a significantly greater number of people that you put time and effort into building a relationship that becomes a mutually beneficial relationship, both in terms of stuff that happens away from LinkedIn, names, leads, tips, information about pitching, all the rest of it, and the algorithmic effect on LinkedIn, then this is a hugely beneficial relationship for you, right? And that's how LinkedIn can work for you. That's what I call the associates technique on LinkedIn. You will obviously connect with all the people that you want to do business as well, but think about these other people, that in-between stage, those people that are just as motivated as you are to reach that same audience. They can be really helpful to you.
Brilliant, Mark. That was, I hope everybody else was taking as many notes as I was. That was brilliant. That put into words things I felt, but didn't really verbalize or even process through my own head. That ROE piece, right? Return on energy, return on effort. You can utilize LinkedIn and waste a whole lot of time in ways that waste, just kind of willy-nilly getting whatever connections, whoever wants to connect with you, or fill that feed with valuable interactions. When I say valuable, it can be both professional and personal, but be really discerning on who you're connecting with. And I love your whole concept of associates versus competitors, or comrades, right? Versus competitors. It is like audiences. I want to reach a certain audience. You're reaching a similar audience. And if we are direct, quote unquote, competitors, you look at it a different way. For instance, there are a lot of speaking engagements. It's one and done. You get on their stage. There's really not an opportunity to get on their stage again. Not all of them, but there are a good number of those. How fabulous would it be if you just knock the host's socks off, and as you depart, say, hey, listen, for next year, I actually have some really great contacts I can put you in touch with, right? What is that going to do for you? That's going to create a law of reciprocity, whereas now that host is going to be compelled and happy to introduce you to maybe some of their vendors or other comrades who might also be needing a speaker. So good all around. I love 100%. That you brought that up.
It's like, if it's like a conference or something like that, and they've got multiple speakers on, the people that you meet in the green room or afterwards and other speakers, you've got something in common. You're all there together. You've all got to go through the same thing. You're all giving each other support. That's normally the kind of environment that you're in that situation. You don't feel competitive in the green room. You're all helping each other, aren't you? Right? Well, all of these people are associates, right? So, find them on LinkedIn, connect with them on LinkedIn, support their content on LinkedIn, help them as much as you possibly can. They'll do the same back to you, and you'll both gain benefit from doing that. And every time you go to a conference, every other speaker that you meet, great opportunity to build more and more and more associates. It can only benefit everyone. As you rightly say, you're not going to keep going back to that conference year after year after year after year, but they can go next year, and you can go next year to the one that they did last year, and on you go from there.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Okay. There's so much more I want to dive into. There's two really important questions I want to ask before we wrap. But before we even go there, tell us, there's going to be a good number of the Speak Packed audience that want to know, how the heck do I find Mark Williams? Well, first and foremost, we all know we can find you on LinkedIn, Mr. LinkedIn, right? Because I'm sure there's lots of Mark Williams out there. So look for Mr. LinkedIn, but tell us some other ways that speakers specifically can reach out to you, some of the things you might offer them, and a little bit more about your podcast, how to find your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, the two main ways of finding me, to be honest, LinkedIn and the podcast. They're my two main channels, really. Don't really use anything else. They certainly not as much. The Mr. LinkedIn thing's interesting, actually, because you won't find me through that search. If you search Mr. LinkedIn, you won't find me, because LinkedIn have decided they don't like it.
because one of those things they changed along the way. Right?
It's a bit of a trademark thing that they asked me to take it out of my profile and stuff, so you won't find it as a keyword search anymore. So, but bizarrely, it's still my URL, and they haven't got a problem with that. So it's actually just linkedin.com/in and then /Mr. LinkedIn, MR LinkedIn. That's how you find me on LinkedIn. Podcast is called Informed by Mark Williams. Now, I don't just talk about speaking at all. Don't just talk about business development. Talk about all aspects of LinkedIn on there. But it's a fun show. It's kind of mostly weekly. I don't always strictly stick to weekly, but it's mostly weekly. You get updates about what's happening, new changes to LinkedIn, but you also get a lot of information about techniques and things like what I've just talked about. That kind of content is always included in the show. It's not a traditional standard podcast of being an interview show. I do occasionally interview people, but it's mainly me. All right, so it's mainly me just talking to the audience. And as I say, I learned many years ago that that just be very frank and just be properly who I am, which some people will like, and other people will listen to a couple of episodes and go, I can't be doing with this, so, which is fine. But yeah, so they're the two ways really.
Okay, fabulous. So that in /Mr. LinkedIn or informed by or with informed
podcast with Mark Williams.
Okay, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. But for those who are audio only right now, those definitely connect with Mark Williams if you're an emergency.
I mean, if you did a keyword search on LinkedIn for podcasts, you will find the Informed Podcast. It's quite a well-established 445 episodes now. So
wowza. Yeah, well, huge following. So you're giving some value out there, or otherwise people wouldn't stick around. Okay, Mark. So when I decided to take LinkedIn seriously and saw the value that it really is and really started diving into the LinkedIn waters, I got a little bit overwhelmed. There's LinkedIn newsletters, there's LinkedIn roundtables, there's LinkedIn events. Like, I know we're getting towards the end. I think this is probably a whole episode in itself if you'll come back and we can really dive deeper. But tell me a little bit about what is worth the effort. Where should you maybe focus on in your first, year in LinkedIn?
Yeah. No, it's a good question and an important question. So the first thing you should do is create a great profile. And again, you could do a whole hour on that in itself. Make sure that you think about presenting yourself as a speaker and make it very, very clear. Background image of you on stage is always a good visual, is really important to people. Immediately looking at that, I can see you're a speaker. Include it in your headline, which is a bit underneath your name. You've got 220 characters to work with there. So just make that keyword orientated around speaking and the topics that you speak about. And also think about using the services section. Okay, LinkedIn services section of your profile. There is one in there called public speaking. Make sure you use that. You may get an assignment potentially through that. All right, there's a lot more to profile on that, but just a few quick pointers. Get your profile right. Secondly, build a network. Now, I've touched on that with associates, but also make sure that you do have an intention to build a very targeted network and expansive, but you do not need tens of thousands of connections. It's not going to add any value at all. Don't think numbers on LinkedIn. Numbers are not that important. They're important to a degree, okay? I just said to you then, you could have 30,000 connections, right? And they could all post tomorrow. You would not see that content. The content you will see is with the people that you engage with, right? So that could be a very small number of people. So the fact that you've got all these connections really doesn't add any value at all, right? So yes, you can direct message a connection. And so you would definitely want to connect with the kind of people that you want to contact at some point, right? But your audience is potentially massive through followers, which is different. Someone can just follow you without connecting to you. And also through secondary. So meaning that if I post something, they like or comment on it, and then it goes to their connections and followers. All right. So plenty of opportunity to expand there. So don't go for huge numbers. I'm not talking hundreds, probably more like thousands. But, I've got, I think, about 11,000 connections. Way too many for me. I'd like to get that down if I can, right? There's just no value in having more than that, right? Or any added value is minute, to be honest. All right, so that's the sort of network building side of things.
So engagement and interaction is king on LinkedIn.
So you need to focus on engagement,
okay,
right? So before thinking about posting, you've got to focus on engagement. So what that means is that you are targeting both individuals and topics and commenting on that content. And you're spending time every day doing that. Far more engagement, commenting, than posting. Far more. Like at least 5 times, possibly as much as 10 times more comments than posts.
Wow.
Right? Good comments are content. Good comments allow you visibility to an audience that's not your audience. Good comments show people who you are. But of course, that means the comments have to be good. So think about what you're saying. Think about adding value. Don't sell yourself in a comment. Nobody likes to see that. But make sure you focus your comments on adding value to the conversation. Have an opinion. Pitch in with something. Add value. 2 types of content. One is focused by the poster. Who posted this? There's someone that I would like to, engage with. So that could be an associate, as described before, or it could be a potential client, or other people who you think are very relevant out there. But also think about engaging with content that is not from specific individuals, but is around a subject that you know is of great interest to your target audience. So just do a keyword search, the top of LinkedIn, put in whatever words you think could be relevant to find the right content, and then subfilter it by posts. Okay, just click on posts, you'll see it underneath there. And now you're seeing a load of posts that mention that word within the post. Could be long form, could be an article, or could be short form posts. And comment where you see engagement already happening. Right? That way, you're introducing yourself to a new audience. The person that posted it may well be someone that might be a relevant associate or even a potential client. Who knows? Good way of finding people as well through content. But spend a lot of time doing that. That's the first thing. Then, of course, once you start to establish yourself as a very consistent added value commenter, then you're in a position where you can start posting because you've gained more of a voice. People have started to follow you. People started to be interested in what you've got to say. And then you start posting content. Content, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this, should be designed for your audience. Not about you, not about what you do. Stop talking about what you do. Start talking about topics that are highly relevant and interesting to your target audience. By all means, give out information that's helpful, useful, and educational. LinkedIn love that kind of content, both as a community and the company. The algorithm will support that type of content. But equally, don't just do that. Also, add value, for sure, but equally put out content that you think is challenging to people. Ask questions, get some debate going. When you post, one of your intentions should be to start a conversation. Think about interpersonal networking, in-person networking. Don't go up to someone and start telling them all about what you do. Go up to someone and start asking questions. Be interested in them. Start a debate. Get people talking, right? That's what good content is. The more people that comment on your post, the more people will see it. So posting comes in time, but you never lose the commenting side of it. You're always spending a lot of time out there commenting on other people's content.
Wow, Mark, so much value there. There's so much value there. I literally took pages of notes. So solid profile, intentional network, engage and interact, huge. You gave us some incredible tips on really effective ways to engage and interact. I hope the SpeakPact audience took notes on that. That was fabulous. I keep getting notices, right, to write these articles. If I write 3 articles on a certain topic, somehow I get some sort of badge. I've never seen the badge, but I do it quite frequently. There's opportunities to do a newsletter, to create LinkedIn events, to create roundtables. As a final question before the signature question, what are your thoughts on those? Should we spend time doing that or spend our time just interacting to begin with?
Okay, so the first thing that you talked about, I think, from your description was collaborative articles. Yes. I would ignore collaborative articles completely, right? Now, that's controversial. Some people very much think they're a good thing to do. I just think they're not as visible as other parts of LinkedIn, such as content and comments. And what you're really doing is feeding the LinkedIn AI machine, right? So what you're basically doing is they're asking for your expertise that they then feed into their artificial intelligence machine. And if you have a premium account on LinkedIn, you'll see it now where a post comes up and it puts a little link at the bottom that allows you to click on it and it'll elaborate or give more information on a certain subject that's been mentioned in that post. Well, that information is being fed by the information going into collaborative articles, right? The benefit to you is average visibility of your added value that you're adding into that question, because collaborative articles are just questions, really, which is of moderate value to you, in my opinion, in comparison to other things. And a badge. Right? Orange badges last 60 days. You've got to keep contributing, and those contributions have to be upvoted. So it just goes on and on and on. It's gamification of LinkedIn. They are desperate to get you to give them your knowledge. Now, whilst we said before, be generous with your knowledge, the one area where perhaps you need to be a bit more cautious is AI, right? Because you are just feeding the machine. So be careful with that. If you think about how, and it's a different subject, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you think about how targeted collaborative articles are. Very niche topics, very niche questions, and you are giving very specific answers. That is far better feeding AI with that than it is by generically looking at content and looking for keywords and trying to guess whether that's about that subject or this subject, right? So be careful with collaborative articles. Not a big fan. Events can work. Events can be a positive experience. Events can be, you can just join events to see the other attendees, which can be interesting just in itself, right? But it wouldn't be an area that I'd start with. It might be something that you develop into, but so I'm not against events, but they're not the highest priority. Newsletters, brilliant. Without a doubt, a newsletter can be one of the most powerful tools on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter that has, I'd have to check, but I think it's going to be around 10,000 subscribers, something like that. Might be a bit more now. I need to check. And when I first started, what happens is they allow you to invite all of your connections and followers to subscribe to your newsletter. Okay. If they decide to subscribe, every time you post an article associated to that newsletter, they get notified on LinkedIn, and they also get it by email. Right. So it becomes like an email newsletter. Right. And I think first time I did it, I maybe had about 10,000 connections or 9,000 connections probably at the time. And about 3,000, so about a third of those people subscribed. And that has since grown, okay? So every time I do an article, 10,000 people or so get notified and get it by email. That's amazing. That's really, really powerful. And so I'm a big fan of newsletters. There are a lot of newsletters out there these days, so it's a little bit harder. You probably won't get a third subscribed straight away these days. It was early days when I did it. But even so, very much worth considering. But it is long form content, right? So you've got to be committed to, in effect, blogging, right? You don't have to do it every week, maybe once a month minimum, but certainly worth considering. They were the three, weren't they? I haven't missed something.
The other one, I'll go back to my note over here. Because it's one that I'm really, okay, so there's the roundtables. So there's new newsletters. I'm just like, gosh, I create content all the time. I could easily create a newsletter, and I know I'm missing the mark there. I'm glad what you said about events, but I do think when I do these LinkedIn Lives, maybe I should create an event just from our pre-interview talk. A little bit more into that. And then what about like roundtables, or is there something that I don't know about that would be a good thing to know about LinkedIn?
What do you mean by roundtables? That's not a term I'm familiar with.
Maybe
you
it's
mean groups or
LinkedIn roundtables. They're basically small groups where you come together and kind of crowdsource and mastermind.
Yeah, I mean, I think the terminology on LinkedIn is groups. I think is what you're talking about. Yeah, groups. Look, if you find a really good group that where there's a good level of engagement and the right kind of people in the group, then it can be beneficial, for sure. A lot of groups on LinkedIn are not particularly beneficial. They're large, full of spam. People are members but never turn up, never notice what's going on. I would say the majority of groups are like that. If that's what you mean by roundtable, it's not really a term I'm particularly familiar with. So it's you may mean something else, but it's not something I'm aware of.
Right. I think you're definitely right. I was thinking in terms of my Booking Agents Connect, like we do it through Zoom, we talk through DM, we send them an invitation through email, but I thought, am I missing the mark with utilizing that tool? But it's just, we know Zoom, we just have another system that we utilize.
Yeah. I mean, some people, again, you might be referring to what people call pods, where they're all in a group of some sort, could be on WhatsApp, could be on LinkedIn, could be anywhere, frankly. And then when they post, they all agree that they're going to engage with that post and stuff like that. Gaming the system, not a clever idea. LinkedIn are trying to find ways of stopping you doing that. You could lose your account as a result of doing it. And it's fake. It's fake content. It's not fake content. It's fake engagement. Generally speaking, my view on any kind of automation is, or anything that gets you excited because it looks like it's gaming the system in some way. It is. It's cheating. Is that the kind of person that you are?
Yeah.
If you're,
I don't know about pods, and I've never been part of one, but I have. That's not what Booking Agents Connect is, but I can see that somebody could want to create something like that. And I don't know, kind of. They do
happen. They do go on. It's worth a mention because people will come across it. I'm sure there are ones orientated in the speaker environment, and not a good idea. Who am I to dictate, ethics and morals, right? You make your own decision on these things. All I'm saying is, if you're going to go out there and feel comfortable knowing deep down that actually you're cheating, then so be it. That's up to you, but it wouldn't be my cup of tea.
Yes. Okay. So as we wrap, and maybe another time we can talk about setting up events if you're going to do a LinkedIn Live, and are LinkedIn Lives even worth it? Because I know lives are big in certain other spaces, but you brought up a really good point earlier, and that is, we're talking about a professional community with people with appointments all day long, right? If you're just going to pop in and do an unannounced live, how smart is that? So I think the events feature could help that.
Yeah, live streaming obviously started in other social media platforms, not business orientated social media platforms, and so their rise to popularity was people who are casually having fun and on their phone, and it pops up that such and such is live, and they go, I'll jump in on this. This looks great. But that doesn't really work in business. You can't just walk up to someone in business and go, hey, I want your attention right now. Well, actually, I'm right in the middle of something, if you don't mind. I always thought when they brought live streaming into LinkedIn, it was a waste of time. But actually, that's not true, because it does work, but it has to be built around events. And when they introduced events and live streaming, then that makes sense, because at that stage, you are now able to get people to look at that and go, that looks interesting. I'm going to put that in my diary and make sure I'm there. Plus, if they register for the event, they can then watch the live afterwards, even if they can't make it at the time, right? So, but they've got it there, and it shows in their feed. So I think it's a better way of doing it.
Yes. Okay. Well, you've already given us so much gold, and for me to ask for one more piece of gold feels a little greedy, especially that engagements piece. That is something every single one of us can do today, right? No, it doesn't take any talent. It just takes being real and a bit of intentionally giving of your time each day to interact. But you know that this show is Speak Packed, and our signature question at the end of every show is for you and I collectively, as we make a pact to make the biggest impact in our space that we can, that together we also make a pact with our audience, the Speak Packed audience and the Inform audience, on doing this one extra thing that can kind of move the needle within their impact that much more. Is there something you'd like to speak to with that as we close?
I think with regards to content, we didn't really talk much about content. We know the chance, but if you were going to think about content and the medium of content, how are you going to put your content out? Absolute must for a speaker is video content. Right? So you have to get comfortable in front of a camera or a phone. And whatever you're going to deliver in terms of content, whatever subject you think is something that would resonate your audience, at the point that you're starting to think about that content and crafting it, think about, could I do this on video? Could I just talk to the camera about this? And do so. Because there's no better way of people who don't know you on LinkedIn starting to get to know you. All right. They will see what you look like. They will hear your voice, see your mannerisms, and start to warm towards this person. And over time, they get used to that, and then they want to see more of you. To me, if you're a speaker and you're not putting out video content, you are massively missing a trick. It's really important to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. So with LinkedIn, is short form video content, medium form, long form, does it matter, or just do it? Because I know somebody's generally sitting at their desk. They probably can't. Yeah. Go ahead.
They're not going to have sound on. That's important to know. So always make sure that you use the auto caption feature, because they will put sound on if they think this looks good, and then they might stick earphones in, or they might even, put it on their phone and walk out of the room, and or save that post and watch it later on. Shorts, definitely. Probably less than a minute. So short sound bites. Keep it real, as in authentic. It's you. You're not presenting. Don't try and push anything. Just be yourself, But if you've got tips or things that you want to say, do it on video. Get comfortable with that environment, because I think if someone's going to book you, they want to know what you're like and what you sound like and the way you come across. And there's no better way of doing that than video. But yeah, short, snappy videos are good. They're also more likely to appear in this new feed on LinkedIn that you'll see, particularly on mobile. It's a bit like TikTok, where once you click on a video that has been assigned to that feed, you can then scroll it, right? So you just then watch that video, scroll to the next one, scroll to the next one, scroll to the next one. So short videos, but also videos that it will do both, okay? But ideally, because it's orientated towards mobile format, you really want it, that way,
yes.
Portrait. That type of video, short, snappy, adding value, giving tips, that type of thing, is what you should be aiming for.
So much goodness, Mark. Thank you for being with us today. Mark Williams, look him up, Mr. LinkedIn, Informed Podcast with Mark Williams. Definitely seek him out. And thank you for being with us here today, Mark. Thank you for being so generous with your hard-earned, long-earned wisdom.
It's my pleasure. It's been really good fun. Thank you.
And for our Speak Packed audience, the way you can thank us is liking this video, sharing it with others who you feel like could also find value in this. We thank you for being with us all the way to the end. I know it was a valuable time spent. And we just, from our hearts to yours, want to say thank you and ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Packed podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the Speak Packed movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply #SpeakPacked.